We operate under what researchers call the conscious control illusion, the belief that our rational, deliberate mind is in charge of our beliefs and decisions. Neuroscience tells a different story. We're going to read from my article, The Intelligence Paradox. Hi, I'm Layla, and we discuss propaganda, social engineering, mind control, and marketing. It's going to be fun. It gets a little dark, and if you're interested in more content like this, you can definitely follow me on Substack, Patreon, or you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. The Intelligence Paradox. Why the smarter you are, the more sophisticated the story you tell yourself. The people most susceptible to sophisticated manipulation are often the ones who believe they are immune to it. Here is something the manipulation research makes uncomfortably clear. High intelligence does not protect you from propaganda. It doesn't. Sorry. It doesn't. It really doesn't, because we'll get to it later, but propaganda works by infecting your mind, right? So the more you consume propaganda, the more likely you are to be infected by it, especially when you have no framework for digesting or analyzing. You have no sort of, let's say, digestive tract for the information. A lot of people just consume information whole. They don't bother, chewing it. They don't bother analyzing it. They don't ask questions. They just consume. And the more they digest, the more it's going to affect them. Okay. In some cases, it makes you more vulnerable to be intelligent. Yeah, it does. I know this fact is just so contradictory to how we as people analyze reality. The uncomfortable truth that intelligence alone can't save you from manipulation or propaganda has been one of the biggest misconceptions I came across discussing propaganda for audiences both online and offline. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of hurdles when it comes to discussing propaganda and getting people to accept the fact that they do not have conscious control for everything in their life. They are completely vulnerable to the influences of media, the influences of their family, stories, whatever it is. A lot of people are in supreme denial, and especially people who are otherwise incredibly intelligent. They don't see what they don't see. So it's very difficult to get people to come around. Intelligent people are not vulnerable because they are naive, but because they are better at building elaborate justifications for decisions that were made for them before they were consciously aware a decision was being made. Call it the intelligence paradox. Your reasoning system, the very capacity you trust to protect you, becomes a tool used against you. The smarter you are, the more convincing the rationalization you can construct around a compromised judgment. That is to say, less intelligent people don't make these rationalizations. They definitely do. This is not a comfortable observation I've made, but it is a necessary one because it points to something most media literacy education gets fundamentally wrong. The assumption that awareness is protection. It's not. Understanding why requires looking at 4 specific cognitive blind spots that make even the highly capable people sitting ducks for propaganda and manipulation. Oh, I love that. And when we go into the book Jacques Ellul that I'm reading on my book series, you'll see that he specifically calls out how people think that there's a difference, that somehow if they're aware it's propaganda, it won't work as effectively. Well, it does. It usually does. Feeling. Someone is arguing with you, and even though you know factually and objectively that they're wrong, some part of you starts to doubt yourself anyway. Your logical mind is saying, this makes no sense. A deeper layer is whispering, maybe they're right. Maybe, I don't know. Probably not. That gap between what you know and what you're starting to feel is where manipulation lives. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a sign. It just makes you slightly off balance, slightly uncertain, slightly willing to defer to someone else's vision or version of reality. Most people chalk this up to being too polite or giving someone the benefit of the doubt. But what it actually is happening is far more systematic and far more exploitable. Part 2. What this actually is. This is not about being weak-minded or gullible. It's about how human cognition actually works versus how we believe it works. We operate under what researchers call the conscious control illusion, the belief that our rational, deliberate mind is in charge of our beliefs and decisions. Neuroscience tells a different story. The systems that process incoming information, filter it for threats, and generate behavioral responses operate largely before conscious awareness comes online. By the time you're thinking about a message, the emotional and identity hooks have already been set. The routes have already been routed. you're already the conscious control illusion. The belief that your rational, deliberate mind is in charge of your decisions. In practice, the emotional and identity responses that drive behavior happen well before conscious evaluation begins. Your conscious mind is often narrating a decision, not making it. This is why intelligent, educated, self-aware people are manipulated consistently and constantly. They are often the hardest to convince. The smarter you are, the better you are at constructing post hoc justifications for decisions that were already made for you. Your reasoning capacity, in other words, is not your primary defense. Under the right conditions, emotional pressure, identity threat, social proof, and the appearance of authority become the system that explains why the manipulation was actually your own idea. Part 3. The 4 blind spots. The 4 blind spots below are not personality flaws. They are structural features of how human cognition operates. Each one is a legitimate, often adaptive, cognitive pattern that becomes exploitable in an environment specifically designed to exploit it. Yeah. Blind spot number 1, the conscious control illusion. This one just locks everyone in. They can't see past it. They really want to feel in control. They want to feel like they're empowered. And unfortunately, being someone who's trying to educate people on manipulation, a lot of people turn their heads immediately when they hear that, hey, you might not be in total control of what you think and how you feel and how you act, because you're just not. You're just not. That's not how the brain works. So, blind spot number 1, the conscious control illusion. You believe your rational mind is running the show. In practice, emotional responses and identity-based reactions happen in System 1, fast, automatic, below awareness, and your conscious system, System 2, arrives afterward to explain what just happened. Manipulators attack System 1. Most people defend with System 2. It's like bringing a calculator to a knife fight. Oops. Blind spot number 2, emotional reactivity. Emotional activation is not a sign of weakness. It is a biological alarm system. The problem is that this alarm system can be deliberately triggered by fear appeals, outrage content, manufactured urgency, and identity threat. To hijack your judgment before your analytical capacity comes online. By the time you're thinking clearly, the behavioral responses has already been primed. So, they already hijack your emotions. They already get you in a state. They already know how they're going to get you to react emotionally. So they're in control of how you're going to think in terms of System 1, how you're going to behave and how you're going to react based on attacking System 1, not System 2, which would be your rational logical conscious mind. Blind spot number 3, subconscious processing vulnerability. The sensory system processes roughly 11 million bits of information per second. The conscious mind handles approximately 40 to 50 of them. That gap, nearly the entirety of what you process, is where influence operates. Framing, priming, emotional contagion, and social pressure all work in this space. You cannot consciously monitor what you are not consciously aware of. You just can't do it. And if you're not sure of framing, priming, emotional contagion, we'll be having a video on that as well. Framing is very important. All of these concepts are very important. So if you're new to the channel, definitely stick around, and we'll have more videos, and I'll link any videos supporting that below for you. But for right now, don't worry. Just let's go along with it. Let's digest the concept, and then later on, we'll get into it more. Blind spot number 4, reality avoidance. This one, reality avoidance. Oh my God, this is the one that drives me absolutely crazy. I feel like if I can get people to acknowledge reality, we would make so much progress as humans, as society, if we could just acknowledge reality and agree what reality looks like, if we have data and things like that to back it up. No, they don't want to do that. They want to avoid it as much as possible. So blind spot number 4, reality avoidance. Most people avoid learning in depth how manipulation works, not because they are not curious, but because the knowledge is uncomfortable. It requires confronting the degree to which past decisions were influenced. Again, it has to go back to giving them that sense of security or insecurity, whether or not they were right or wrong, whether or not they were fully in control. And a lot of people do not want to face that truth, that in fact, they might not be totally in control of how they think and they feel and they act ultimately. The avoidance keeps the vulnerability surface area wide open. The first and most consequential protection is the willingness to actually study the mechanisms. The most dangerous manipulation does not announce itself. It makes you complicit in your own deception. I love that. Part 4. Why this matters now. Each of these blind spots existed before social media, before algorithmic content systems, before AI-generated influence operations. What has changed, rapidly and in ways human cognition has not yet adapted to, is the environment in which they operate. We are living through what might be called the weaponized empathy era. Every positive human trait, compassion, open-mindedness, the desire for connection, has been reverse engineered into an influence technique by industries that profit from behavioral control. Your empathy becomes emotional manipulation. Your intellectual curiosity becomes a vector for information warfare. Your desire to be a good person becomes a compliance mechanism. The advertising and corporate interest machine spends over $700 billion annually on the premise that consumer decision-making can be influenced below the threshold of conscious awareness. The political propaganda machine, on every side of every issue, depends on emotional activation and the absence of critical evaluation. Social media platforms are not neutral communication infrastructure. They are the engagement optimization engines, and the content that drives the most engagement is content that floods the System 1, alarm system, outrage, fear, disgust, and tribal activation. The vulnerability economy. Every industry that profits from behavioral influences has a structural interest in psychological protection. Every industry that profits from behavioral influence has a structural interest in psychological protection remaining rare. This does not require a conspiracy, only the consistent application of commercial incentives. The vulnerability of the consumer, the voter, and the follower is the resource being monetized. And then there is AI. AI has not invented psychological manipulation. It has industrialized it, making it faster, cheaper, and more personalized. Super dangerous. The personalization of propaganda is such a dangerous thing. I can't even get into it right now in this video, but you have to understand when the propaganda is tailored to your mood, to your biases, to your feelings by the hour, not just by the day or by the quarter or whatever it is, it's by the hour, it's by the minute. So making it faster, cheaper, more personalized, and more scalable than any human operator could achieve manually. The unguarded mind is now encountering adversarial systems that are not constrained by the limits of human attention, creativity, or time. The asymmetry between the people deploying these systems and the people being targeted by them is staggering. They have spent decades studying how exactly your mind works. You were given folk psychology myths about willpower and common sense and told that was sufficient. It's not. Sorry. Part 5. What actually works? Building genuine resistance requires working with how your mind actually operates, not how you wish it to operate, not how you were told it should operate, not on what's good or what it should be, but how it is. Here are the 6 practices grounded in actual research. So, here's what you need to do to actually protect yourself from influence, from propaganda, from manipulation. Number 1, map your emotional triggers before others do. What makes you feel guilty, anxious, outraged, or suddenly compliant? These are the entry points. Practice the 3-second pause. Number 6, create decision frameworks that operate below the manipulation layer. I don't make significant decisions during emotionally charged conversations. That's something you could say. Oh, no. I don't change my position under social pressure. Simple. I'm not going to change my mind because of social pressure. That's just not going to happen. Rules made in calm protect you in the storm. Remember, protection is not paranoia, it's precision, and it's entirely learnable.